Hey y'all, welcome back to the Holy Comforter Episcopal Church YouTube Bible study. I'm Jimmy Abbott, the priest here at Holy Comforter, and I have a few reflections on the gospel lesson for this upcoming Sunday, which is taken from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 6, verses 17 through 26. These are the Beatitudes, as Luke gives us. Slightly different from the Beatitudes that are probably more memorable in the Gospel of Matthew in the Sermon on the Mount. This is oftentimes called the Sermon on the Plain because you can see right there in verse 17, it says, Jesus came down with them and stood on a level place. So it says that a great multitude from that whole region has come out to hear Jesus. He casts out their demons. He heals them. And then he looks up and he says, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, when they exclude you, revile you, and defame you on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for surely your reward is great in heaven, for that is what their ancestors did to the prophets. But woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, for you will be hungry. Woe to you who are laughing now, for you will mourn and weep. Woe to you when all speak well of you, for that is what their ancestors did to the false prophets." I think one important thing, or a few important things to point out in here, that Luke is very much directed the whole gospel as a gospel for the poor and the oppressed. The more popular version in Matthew's gospel is, "Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who thirst after righteousness." In Luke's version, there's none of that. It's, "Blessed are the poor, blessed are the hungry, and blessed are the weeping." There's a much more, it's much more direct than in Matthew's gospel. The other thing to contextualize this, remember that there's a great crowd of people around him. And we can imagine Jesus looking out at all those faces, and there's some rich people, and there's some poor people, and there's some who are hungry, and there's some who are mourning. We have to remember that the gospel is given in a context, and that in a sense, this is it's the same multitude that we see at church every Sunday, that there are rich and poor, people who are weeping and grieving. There are all sorts of people gathered, and it's important to remember that the gospel has a word for everybody, whether you're on top or you're on bottom. And I think what we see here is a balancing out, to say that the gospel has come, the good news of Jesus Christ is good news for the poor, and it's hard news for the rich. Not that I don't think being rich is bad. I think that it's if our relationship with money gets in the way of our relationship with God, then that's the problem. The problem is there in relationship, that the relationship could be distorted by our wealth. I think that's a lot of what Jesus is getting at. That when you're hungry, you don't have time for a relationship with God, right? Because all you're worrying about is where to get food. And if you're rich and laughing to yourself, then you don't really have time to think about God, because it's all sort of, you've sort of taken it all in for yourself. I think a lot of what's going on here is Jesus reminding us to curve our souls outward, to give thanks back to God, and to balance things out so that the poor and the hungry are able to do that as well. So those are just a few thoughts on the Beatitudes from the Gospel of Luke. It's great to have all of you join me week by week. You'll see my other video, which is a full introduction to Luke and Acts, to prepare us for the Good Book Club that we are doing during the season of Lent and the season of Easter.